Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Donald Trump just won the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
Against all odds, it seems.
Right. He defeated Kamala Harris, and the whole world is kind of freaking out.
Yeah, you could say that.
So we've got all this stuff to look at, news articles, expert analysis, even some,
Oh, yeah, some spicy takes on social media
Correct.
trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. And that's what we're here to do.
That's right.
Our mission is to break it all down. So think of us as your guide.
Your cheat sheet.
Yeah, how are different countries reacting to this news?
Exactly. And what's behind those reactions?
And you know what it could all mean for the future.
Yeah, the big picture.
So yeah, get ready for some serious, mind-blowing stuff because things are about to get really interesting.
The first thing that jumps out at me is just the surprise.
It's whoa.
Most polls and analysts, they have this as a tight race.
Mm-hmm.
Some even favored Harris.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just a close call. It was a decisive win that flipped the script on everyone.
Yeah, I mean, even the most experienced political analysts are like, what just happened?
Exactly. It seems like everyone's trying to figure it all out.
And speaking of trying to figure it out,
yeah,
the media has completely lost it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, The Guardian.
Wall-to-wall coverage.
It's nonstop. They're all trying to unpack the how and the why of this election.
It's fascinating, though, to see how each outlet is framing the story.
Yeah.
Some focus on the shock and disbelief.
Especially among Democrats and international observers.
Right, while others are diving into the potential policy shifts.
And the global implications.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so let's get into those global reactions because, everyone's got an opinion.
They do.
So where do we even start?
Well, I think a good place to start is to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
Okay.
The deep political divisions within the U.S. that this election has really exposed.
It's right there in the open now.
It is, and you can see it in that New York Times article. Devastated Democrats play the blame game and stare at a dark future.
Yeah.
There's this palpable sense of disappointment and uncertainty among Democrats, while many Republicans are celebrating this as a victory for their values.
So it's two completely different realities smashing into each other.
Those shockwaves are being felt way beyond America's borders.
It's global.
Absolutely. World leaders are scrambling to figure out how to navigate a second Trump presidency.
Well, yeah, because it's nobody really knows what to expect.
Right, and their reactions are all over the place.
Totally. Okay, so let's unpack some of those reactions.
Okay.
Let's start with Russia.
Okay.
Putin was super quick to congratulate Trump.
He was.
Expressing, willingness to restore ties, which, I mean, given their history, isn't a huge surprise.
Not really.
But how might this renewed Trump-Putin dynamic play out on the world stage?
Especially with the situation in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's the big question.
That's a huge question mark.
It is. Trump's talked about ending the war in Ukraine in a day.
Wow.
But his critics are worried that his desire for a quick deal with Putin could compromise Ukraine's sovereignty.
So potentially good news for Putin, but maybe not so much for Ukraine.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, okay, what about Iran?
Okay.
They haven't exactly been on the best of terms with the U.S.
Yeah, not at all.
So what are they saying?
Well, Iranian officials are downplaying the significance of the election.
Interesting.
They're saying they see no difference between Trump and Harris, and that they're prepared for any policy changes.
Oh, wow.
It's a very pragmatic stance.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can sense the tension there.
Under the surface.
Definitely. And, Al Jazeera's analysis points out that Trump's hardline stance on Iran and his talk of controlled escalation could increase the risk of conflict in the region.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got Russia cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Iran putting on a brave face.
That's one way to put it.
What about the rest of the world?
Well, the global financial markets are always a good indicator
of
how things are being perceived.
Makes sense.
And it's interesting, we're seeing mixed reactions.
Right.
On the one hand, the U.S. stock market and Bitcoin hit record highs.
Wow.
Which suggests that some investors think Trump's policies will boost certain sectors.
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, interest rates on U.S. debt jumped, reflecting concerns about the long-term economic impact of those same policies.
So it's kind of people are excited, but also a little bit scared.
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster ride.
Some are cheering and some are holding on for dear life.
Exactly. And it seems like no matter where you look, uncertainty is the main theme. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that uncertainty extends to Trump's foreign policy as a whole.
Right. What's he going to do?
Exactly. Will his close ties to Netanyahu affect the escalating conflict in Gaza and Lebanon? How will his skepticism toward international institutions impact global cooperation?
On issues like climate change.
Right, exactly. Those are some of the questions that world leaders are grappling with.
So it feels like we're entering this period of like massive global upheaval
Yeah.
with everyone trying to predict the unpredictable.
Which brings us to one of the biggest surprises of this whole election.
Okay.
The shift in the Latino vote.
Oh, wow.
Trump actually made gains with this demographic,
All right.
defying all conventional wisdom, leaving even seasoned political analysts baffled.
So even the experts got this one wrong.
They did.
What does that tell us about like the current political landscape?
I think it just underscores how much the ground has shifted.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a level of unpredictability that makes traditional models and assumptions almost obsolete.
Oh, wow.
And that has major implications for how the world interacts with a second Trump administration.
That's a good point. So it's like we're trying to read tea leaves in a hurricane.
Yeah, kind of.
So given all this uncertainty, what are some potential scenarios we could see play out on the world stage?
Well, one possibility is we see a further erosion of multilateralism.
Okay.
You know, Trump's never been shy about his dislike for international institutions and agreements. If he doubles down on that approach, it could embolden other countries to go their own way, leading to a more fragmented and unstable world order.
So like every man for himself.
Basically.
That doesn't sound very promising.
It is a cause for concern.
Okay.
I mean, global challenges like climate change and pandemics,
Yeah.
they require international cooperation.
Right.
If countries retreat into their own corners, it'll be much harder to address these issues effectively.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
Right.
Is there any hope for a more cooperative approach?
It's not impossible.
Okay.
Some experts believe that Trump's transactional approach could actually create opportunities for new types of partnerships.
Really?
Yeah, for example, he might be more willing to engage in bilateral deals with countries that share specific interests, even if those countries have different values or ideologies.
So like a let's make a deal foreign policy?
Yeah, you could call it that.
I guess that could work in some cases, but it seems risky to rely on that as like the main strategy.
It definitely has its limitations.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that Trump's focus on deal-making often prioritizes short-term gains.
Over long-term strategic considerations.
Exactly.
Okay, so we could see some quick wins, but at what cost?
Right.
What about the potential for conflict?
Yeah.
Trump's first term was marked by escalating tensions with countries like China and Iran. Could things get even more heated in a second term?
It's definitely a risk.
Right.
He's already hinted at taking a tougher stance on China, especially on trade. And his rhetoric towards Iran remains very hawkish.
Yeah.
The question is whether he'll be able to balance his hardline instincts with the need to avoid a major international crisis.
It's a delicate balance.
It is a tightrope walk with the whole world watching.
Speaking of watching, how are other countries likely to adapt their strategies in response to a second Trump presidency?
Well, some might try to appease him, hoping to stay on his good side and avoid becoming a target. Others might choose to confront him directly, pushing back against his policies and rhetoric. And then there are those who will try to chart their own course, seeking to build alliances and strengthen their own positions independently of the U.S.
So a mix of appeasement, confrontation, and going it alone.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
It sounds like a recipe for a very complicated and unpredictable geopolitical landscape.
You got it. And navigating that landscape will require a deft touch.
Yeah.
And a willingness to adapt to constantly changing circumstances.
For sure.
The old playbooks might not work anymore.
Interesting.
Countries will need to be flexible, pragmatic, and willing to think outside the box.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about that media frenzy we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
It feels like everyone's trying to analyze every tweet and soundbite for clues about what Trump's second term might hold.
Yeah, I mean, is that level of scrutiny helpful, or is it just adding to the noise? I think it's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On the one hand, the intense media coverage can provide valuable insights into Trump's thinking and his administration's policies.
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, the constant stream of information can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
It can easily lead to misinterpretations and overreactions.
Yeah, for sure.
It's important to be discerning and to focus on credible sources.
So maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, I'd say so. A chance to glean insights, but also a need to be careful about getting swept up in the hype.
Right.
It's crucial to maintain a healthy skepticism
Mm-hmm.
and to remember that things are rarely as simple as they seem in the world of politics and international relations.
Especially with someone like Trump.
Yeah.
Who's known for his unpredictable behavior and ability to, like, upend expectations.
It's like trying to hit a moving target in the dark.
Totally.
Which brings us back to that sense of uncertainty that permeates everything.
Hmm.
And while that uncertainty can be unsettling, it also presents an opportunity.
An opportunity?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, this moment of upheaval forces us to re-examine our assumptions, to question the status quo, and to think creatively about how to shape the future.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
It's a chance to challenge conventional wisdom, experiment with new approaches, and to build a more resilient and adaptable world.
So instead of getting, like, bogged down by all the fear and uncertainty,
Right.
we can see this as a chance to rethink and reimagine, how we approach these global challenges.
Yeah, it's like a global reset button has been pressed.
I like that, a global reset.
And this reset doesn't just apply to governments and institutions.
Okay.
It applies to individuals, too.
So, like, what can the average person listening to this do?
Right.
How can we make sense of this new world and find our place in it?
Well, I think it starts with staying informed and engaged.
Okay.
Don't just passively consume the news.
Right.
Critically analyze it.
Great.
Look for diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask those tough questions and challenge assumptions.
So it's about being an active participant,
Exactly.
not just a passive observer.
Right. It sounds like you're calling for a global awakening.
Yeah, kind of.
In a way, yes, this isn't just about surviving the next 4 years of a Trump presidency.
Right.
It's about using this moment as a catalyst for positive change,
Okay.
for building a more just equitable and sustainable world for everyone.
Regardless of who's in power.
Exactly.
That's a powerful message.
It's a reminder that even in the face of all this uncertainty and upheaval, we have the power to shape our own destiny.
So how do we do that?
Well, that power comes from knowledge, from critical thinking, and from a willingness to engage with the world around us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the global reactions to Trump's victory, what's like the one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
I would say this. Don't let fear paralyze you.
Oh.
Embrace the uncertainty. Use this moment as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to contribute to creating the kind of world you want to live in.
It's a call to action for all of us.
It is.
It's a reminder that we're not just along for the ride, we're the ones holding the steering wheel.
And the road ahead may be bumpy.
Yeah.
But it's also full of possibilities.
I love that. Well said. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
Of course.
And thanks to you, our listeners, for diving in with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful. Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Donald Trump just won the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
Against all odds, it seems.
Right. He defeated Kamala Harris, and like the whole world is kind of freaking out.
Yeah, you could say that.
So we've got all this stuff to look at, news articles, expert analysis, even some,
Oh, yeah, some spicy takes on social media,
Correct.
trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. And that's what we're here to do.
That's right.
Our mission is to break it all down. So think of us as like your guide.
Your cheat sheet.
Yeah, like how are different countries reacting to this news?
Exactly, and what's behind those reactions?
And you know what it could all mean for the future.
Yeah, the big picture.
So yeah, get ready for some serious, mind-blowing stuff because things are about to get really interesting.
The first thing that jumps out at me is just the surprise.
It's like, whoa.
Most polls and analysts, they have this as a tight race. Some even favored Harris.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just a close call. It was a decisive win that flipped the script on everyone.
Yeah, I mean, even the most experienced political analysts are like, what just happened?
Exactly. It seems like everyone's trying to figure it all out.
And speaking of trying to figure it out,
yeah,
the media has completely lost it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, The Guardian.
Wall-to-wall coverage.
It's like nonstop. They're all trying to unpack the how and the why of this election.
It's fascinating, though, to see how each outlet is framing the story.
Yeah.
Some focus on the shock and disbelief.
Especially among Democrats and international observers.
Right, while others are diving into the potential policy shift.